People these days, I don't think they have enough imagination, because when you see things like when Avatar came out and people got like so obsessed with Avatar, and they were getting like clinically depressed because they couldn't actually go to whatever planet it takes, Pandora, and become a Na'vi. And they were like, I was looking at some of these forums around the time this movie was out in theaters, and people were like so obsessed and so like blown away, like, oh, it's so imaginative, oh, it's so creative, it's so incredible, it's so beautiful that real life is just boring in comparison. And then I look at Twilight. I don't know anything about Twilight. I haven't seen the movies, I haven't read the books. I just know what I see in commercials and what I see of when the fan base. And well, first off, the Twilight, they're the owners of an IP should not be directing and seeding their fans with how to act. Okay, you don't artificially create your own fandom and tell them what to do. But anyway, that's a whole different rant. But I was reading, saw something on the news about like kids that are going around biting each other, like because of after reading these books, and like and getting really obsessed with it, and going around wearing glitter and dressing like a vampire or whatever. And then my favorite of all, the other day I was on a board, and there was this fellow, and he was asking for advice on transforming into a Pokemon. And he was talking about how he smokes salvia every night to try to have this hallucination fantasy of becoming a Vulpix, because he's obsessed with Pokemon and he wants to be a Vulpix, and so he smokes salvia every night. And it only got worse from there. I think that's more than enough. And it was just really nuts. And I thought he was kidding, but I was fairly convinced that he was serious, because I've seen nutsy, crazy people like this in other fandoms and other things. But when you get obsessed with any work of fiction, oh yeah, there's also a lot of that in like in the His Dark Materials, the Golden Compass community. And when people get really obsessed over a work of fiction and get really like not fascinated, but just like obsessed, like totally fixated on something, it sucks the fun out of the fantasy part of it. Because what makes a good fantasy isn't like just getting sucked into this make-believe world. It's supposed to also help you sort of reflect on how incredible and awesome and cool real life is as well. So getting obsessed with something like that isn't real, it sucks the fun out of it. And I think ironically, this may sound counterintuitive, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that maybe people just don't have enough imagination. I mean, when I was a kid and I wanted to play Voltron, like, I'd go in the backyard and I'd grab a rock and use my imagination and play Voltron. If I wanted to play, like, Thomas the Tank Engine or play trains or whatever, I'd just go in the backyard and grab a rock. It's not, you don't need, like, if I want to play Batman, I'd go in the backyard and I'd get a freaking rock, you don't need, kids these days, well, back then too, but maybe I was fairly unique. And I'd get really into something like Pokemon. I was really into Pokemon, but I didn't buy all the toys and all the stuff they came out with, like, and I'd play the game and I'd play the card game. That's all I needed. I didn't need a bunch of crap to use my imagination and get into that world. And I think it has somewhat to do with the fact that, especially now, too many toys. I think toys are maybe because they're too electronic, or they're too quote interactive, and it's dulling kids to the sensation of actually using their imagination to make believe something. like, and I like you know, some of these toys, you press a button and the toy practically plays with itself for you now. You know, you don't have to pick it up and run with it to pretend it's flying. You just press a button and it actually flies. You know, just stuff like that. I'm being a little bit like Cranky Kong here, bullshit about kids these days, but you know, use your imagination. You know, life's supposed to, you know, like look up Henry Darger. Henry Darger was this dude, and his entire life pretty much was he got up in the morning, he'd go to work, and his work was he was in a hospital, in like a nunnery or something, sweeping the floor every day his entire adult life. That's all he did. And then when he was dying and he was sick in the hospital, and they look into this guy's apartment, no one knows this guy and he never talks to anyone, they find like a 50,000 page novel, like one of the biggest written works in English. And it was this fantasy novel about these little girls with superpowers and this child slave rebellion between this Christian nation and this atheist nation, and he, you know, he had no life. You know, people say, oh, you know, when people get into fantasy, oh, get a life. This guy had no life, and he had a brilliant imagination, and that's how he was able to enjoy his life. So it's not even a matter of, you know, having a life. It's just, you know, use your imagination. You know, don't get so obsessed over something you can't have fun with it because you're trying to make it real. And, you know, have fun in the fact that it isn't real. And I'm starting to yell a bit, but it's like, you know, when you're, you know, painting yourself blue, trying to be a Navi, or smoking salvia, pretending that you're a Pokemon. You know, go out and do some stuff in real life, and, you know, use your imagination. You know, don't let these companies that make these IPs and write these books or make these movies, you know, rule your brain for you to the point where when anything with any slight amount of creativity comes out in it, it just totally blows your mind away. You know, you should be able to blow your own mind away with your own imagination. You know, I'm not saying everyone needs to be a creative writer or spend or whatever. Just use your brain. Come on. Thank you for watching.